Hello, and welcome to the Ripple Impact podcast, where we dive into those fascinating and unexpected human stories, those ripples that can make waves of change. I am so excited to have Claudia Chan here with us today. She is an incredible leader in personal development, coaching, and culture transformation. Claudia spent decades guiding individuals and organizations through moments of change, leading with heart and strategy. From her game-changing, life-changing programs like How We Rise, to her work supporting high-level executives and entrepreneurs, to her She Summits with tens of thousands of women, Claudia has dedicated herself to creating waves that lead to authentic growth and empowerment. And as someone who has personally experienced the How We Rise program, this is a full circle moment for me. So I am so delighted, Claudia, to have you on the show today. As you've been one of my ripple moments, it's incredible to you to be here to share yours. So welcome to the show. It's such a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you, Laura. It's such an honor to be here.
Can you give our listeners and our viewers a little inside track on your career today?
Yeah. So I always pause for a moment when I'm asked, what do you do? Because for me, it's 25 years into entrepreneurship. I just turned 50, so half of my life has been walking in the invisible and creating things out of nothing. It's interesting too, because that question is, so what has your career been and who you are today? It's a big question. So I have been in the people entertainment empowerment space for 25 years. I'm from New York City originally, born and raised. I started in, that first Silicon Alley first dot-com boom, networking events, and had that event background. And for networking events for dot-com professionals in New York, to then women, and which was a big platform in the 2000s called Shecky's Girls Night Out, which became America's largest girlfriend women's platform, to then women's empowerment that turned into She Summit, and moving more and more into leadership and the personal and professional development space.
Amazing. And that's where I first came across the How We Rise programs. You did some training, and there was a course at PepsiCo where I was. And this is back in 2019. And I know this because I have my 18 pages of notes from the program that I cherish and look at often. And in fact, I kind of bring this back out every single time I have my own life moments. So whether that's changing jobs or changing careers or something goes on in my life, I always go back to these notes. It's been at each stage of my life since, well, for the last 6 years. I remember in the very first course that I went through with your program, writing down, what's your purpose? I remember feeling like, oh my God, I don't think I've got one. What is my purpose? And I
Mhm.
remember being so terrified to feel like I didn't have one. I want to do more than this. So what you did in How We Rise gave me the confidence to set up what I've just set up now. So thank you for that, because you have unbeknowing been a big part of my journey.
I mean, that means so much, and that's really so much in my purpose, which is, back down to people and how massive and extraordinary and limitless the potential and the possibility is within people, like one
Yeah.
person. And that's been my obsession, is really like the busyness of life and culture, and basically slowing people down to really help them realize, what is purpose inside of you, and to unleash that. By the way, my husband's calling me right now and has been calling me 24/7, and I need to tell him that I'm doing a podcast.
You do that, you go for it. People have lives beyond jobs.
Yeah, and it's also too, especially in a time where there is no more boundary between our digital devices, and you can, like, drop off your kids and be on the phone with your doctor and knocking out business
Yeah.
emails and sort of paying the bills and sort of juggling the increasingly busyness aspects of life. And so we have to root deeper into those
Mm,
core values. As you've been checking in every year or every few
yeah.
months, like plugging back into the truth and what really matters.
And I genuinely think at that point, my life was my job. And you introduced this concept to me of whole life leadership. It sounds so simple, but it was so game changing to think that I need to lead beyond my job and lead in my life and make sure that I'm leaning into what I need. Some of the gems of wisdom you were sharing was around share your voice and share your vulnerability. And at that moment, vulnerability wasn't even a thing that corporates were talking about. I mean, thankfully, they're talking about it much more today, but this idea of vulnerable leadership was such a powerful unlock for me and gave me such confidence to be me at work and not just be the job, if that makes sense. And it was mad actually. I've shared this with you before, but your work and the notes that I took and who I was almost becoming at that time, I didn't realize because I went back through all my notes and there was three things that I'd written down which now blow my mind because we are called the ripple impacts. I wrote down enlightenment is when waves realize they're an ocean, which is just beautiful.
Mm.
And I wrote down, visualize the ripple impact of your work and of your life. And I wrote down, love your work, love your life, and watch the ripples. And then, so when I read it back, I was like, you have been such a big part of creating this business that is the ripple impact. So to have you on is a wonderful moment. So thank you. You've
I
touched
love
many,
that.
many lives of people through the work that you've done. There must be some standout moments for you along the journey. Can you think of any of those ripple moments that you've witnessed?
I think the first big one is meeting my husband when I was 33 years old. And he's from Georgia, but we met in New York, and he started taking me to church. And I really didn't grow up with
Mm,
a strict faith or consistent faith. My parents talked about believing in God and, our ancestors in heaven, and would talk about my grandparents in heaven, and you're just like your grandmother on your dad's side, and just pray to God and everything is going to be okay. But they were always so busy, typical
yeah.
immigrant Chinese family who came here with nothing and eventually had a Chinese restaurant, and were able to give my brother so much opportunity. But I just really didn't know what it meant to, be a Christian or any of that. So when my husband said, I go to church on Sundays, do you want to come with me? And I was like, sure. And I walked in and people's hands were up and they were singing and worshiping. And I'm like, what is this? But yeah, I was 33 years old. He didn't force it on me. He's like, I go every Sunday if you want to come with me. And I really liked him. And
Mm,
so, but yeah, week by week, Sunday by Sunday, it was rooting back into this core value and
mm,
these core messages. And it really inspired me so much. And at that time, I was probably towards the end of a 10-year that girls night out event platform that I had been
mm,
in
mm.
from 25 to 35 years old. That was one decade of a business, 20, and then 36 to 40 to 45 when COVID hit. That was
Yeah,
another decade, which
yeah.
shut down my conferences because we couldn't have live events. And so now I'm like on my third decade. Towards the end of that first decade, I was around 33, 34 years old. And that's really where I found God and became a
Mm,
believer. And I realized, wow, the church, like I want to pour into people and I want to help connect with people on the inside and the value of people. And I've always been highly social and a community builder and good with people and
mm.
intuitive with people, attuned to people. So that's what took me into the growth and leadership space to create She Summit. That's massively, whether we call it meeting my husband or going to church all in one, that
Yeah.
set my life on a different trajectory.
What was the initial spark? What was the ripple in moment for the She Summit? How did that kind of land in your psyche to go, yes, this is the next wave for me?
Coming from the event space, because I was
Mm,
doing these shopping parties. Shecky's was in the heyday of like Sex and the City era, that
mm.
2000s, like
Oh, one of my favorite
2001 to
eras.
yeah, 2001 to 2010. That decade was when I was 25 to 35 years old.
Mm,
I call it that sort of like women's fluff era where it was fun, but it was still like the value of you. It was
yeah.
still so much rooted in, are you dating somebody? Do you have
Mhm.
a
Mhm.
partner in your life? Are you affording the Jimmy Choos and the Blahniks? And
Yeah.
it just was still a very vapid, superficial era for women
Yeah.
where like all of our sense of like lose weight and look perfect and have
Mm,
flawless skin and have a flawless home and have a house in the Hamptons, which I did have. All of that value was so externalized, like the lack of substance. I already had that event background. And so there was a conference called the Global Leadership Summit, which was out of Willow Creek Church near Chicago. I think they're the largest leadership conference globally because like every church around the world basically license their annual conference and they have these incredible speakers. I discovered a bunch of speakers. Some of them were pastors, some of them just business authors, experts, business, academics. And I just thought of the concept, wow, like it'd be interesting instead of gathering people around entertainment and
Mm.
cocktails and fun, why don't I gather them around something substantive? And that's also when TED
Mhm.
conference was also really coming back. A new leader had come in and sort of revamping it. That's also when South by Southwest
Mhm.
was also taking over Austin and all the pop-up events. And I just was like also coming from somebody in the event space and thinking about event content and experiential content. I was looking at that business model of just convening and gathering people for content and creating that connection. And then at the same time, editorial wise, I was going through a major burnout with my business partner running that company. We were sort of towards the end
Mm.
of that decade and we were moving in different directions of the business. He wanted to do it this way, I wanted to do it this way. And I felt as a woman when I would go to any networking or business organization, and there weren't that many
Yeah.
in the in 2007, 8, 9, 10, 11, there were there
Yeah.
women's empowerment was not a thing.
Yeah.
You would go to a business conference and any women's topic was only
Mm.
work-life balance. Like that's the only
Yeah.
topic it was. It just wasn't a thing. And I personally was that we have a white space. I started studying the women's empowerment content and I thought Fortune's most powerful women's conference is all exclusive. It's like you got to be invited and it's thousands of dollars to attend and you have to be like up here.
Yeah.
And then there was NABO, National Association of like Women Business Owners, but then you go to that and it just looked like a although women were just like men,
I
they
was
were
gonna
wearing
say,
like
was it a
male
room of
suits.
suits even though it's
Yeah, a
women?
room of
Yeah.
suits.
Yeah.
And then there were like sort of more activist, feminist type of organization, like National Association of Women, and then there were just things that were too pink. And I just thought,
Mm.
wow, I really want to modernize and mainstream women's leadership and
Yeah.
empowerment for women. And it just was not something, it wasn't a section
Mm.
in a women's magazine. The women's magazine was always fashion, beauty, home, fitness.
Yeah.
It just was
Yeah.
never like,
Yeah.
I mean, maybe you had career increasingly, but in terms of like leadership and activism and just change and social change, like it wasn't a category. And so I thought I want to create something that pours into women. I started also studying stats of women and girls in the world. So there was a few ripples that happened that came in that period. And then when I was also studying the status of women and girls and what I was going through personally, I thought, wow, this is the white space I need to move into. And that was the moment.
I love it. What gives you the confidence just to go, there's the white space, that's the opportunity, I'm going in for it? What drives you? What gives you your personal confidence and resilience?
Well, I think that creating something out of nothing, because it's one thing to be an entrepreneur and
Mm.
just to take that risk of not having that regular, consistent salary coming in, health insurance, and
Yeah.
all those things that, not to mention societal's timeline
Mm.
of of FOMO, a fear of missing out. Oh, if I waste this year, then I might be behind everybody else and all of that. But I think that number one was having parents who had immigrated here from nothing and my dad was a bartender on Wall Street and like the 60s and some finance guys who were just in their beginning of really killing it. They invested in my dad's first restaurant. These sort of very, I guess, risk and uncertainty is what I was brought
Mm.
up in. Even though they work so hard to make the money for us to go to college and us to go to
Yeah.
a private school, and but I was still that risk and that uncertainty, that beat off the beaten path, that's just always, I guess, was a part of my conditioning. And my mom also said to me always growing up, to own your independence you have to
Mm.
own your own business, and if you go work for somebody else you're always going to be living according to their rules and their structure, and there's a ceiling. And so if you create your own business, then you got to find a way to work for yourself. So
Yeah.
that was also just, I think, so a part of me.
The wonderful words of wisdom from incredible parents that clearly
From Mama
shaped your
Chan.
career. Yeah, Mama
We call
Chan,
her
I
Mama
love
Chan. Mama
that.
Chan.
And you talked about in a lot of your programs, thriving, not surviving. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
So really over 20 years of just working with, living in affluent places. I was in New York City, and then I lived in the Hamptons full time for a while. That's where our kids were born. And then I went to Westport, Connecticut. 4 years ago, we moved down to South Tampa. It's just my journey of living in affluent communities and all the folks that are in their 20s, 30s, 40s that are have that privilege of education and are hustling to make it and serving them content and them going through my coaching programs and leadership programs and conferences and just getting all the data of what they're
Mm.
really going through and what they really struggle with. And after tracking the patterns, there's 10,000 like over 10,000 pieces of data over the course of all those years. I was just one of them where you live unconsciously. We don't realize it, but we live in an unconscious culture and where it is unconscious reaction to what culture tells us we need to do to be successful and to be safe and to be worthy. It's sort of like what's enough? Like what
Mm.
is the end point? And because you can get finally that first house and pay off your mortgage, and then your other friend just got a second house, and then you're just and back in the not enough.
Yeah.
And you can just, be doing great and covering everything and able to afford a great vacation a year or two. And but then this person just made CEO and you're then comparing yourself to them. We wake up every day, what the neighbors are doing, what's happening at our kids' schools, to social media and what we're
Mm.
seeing the latest fundraising or look how skinny on the whether she's doing Ozempic or not. It's just
Yeah.
it's endless of waking up into this unconscious world to feel like we're always in a posture of chasing. We're always in a posture of achieving. We're always behind. I would say there's three patterns that I tracked with the majority of the data is people are in striving. So I bring it down to your family experiences more of the transactional version of you
Interesting.
than
Yeah.
the connection version of you.
Yeah. Doing the
So
jobs, not being present.
right, because if you think about a day and how much whether or not you have children or you're getting people out the door or I got to get this done and I got to get the groceries and what's for dinner tonight and get the kids to school or the program or camp or whatever it is. And then by the time you're home, we're usually running behind. It is just so easy to yeah, just fall into that. And then, after dinner, instead of actually sitting down with your kids to like play Uno or watch a show and just have that connection
Mm.
time, it is like we're doing the dishes.
Yeah.
And how much of it, like, can the dishes wait? Can the OCD of us not having, because that's the other thing too, like visually, your home is also just a landmine
Yeah.
of
Of
a
a to-do
million
list.
of a to-do list,
Yeah.
and you're not enough, and you're not enough, and you're not enough. You're not together
Yeah.
enough,
Yeah.
right? Like, how
Yeah, for
unconscious is that?
sure.
All those little unconscious voices are pulling at us. So striving is you're just constantly behind and you're constantly just working on everything external and producing and executing and achieving. Surviving is I would say the second category that most people are in, which is you're experiencing the leftover version of me. I am so burnt out. Like I look good and I have a nice
Yeah.
house or like the title and the zip code is nice, but like marriage is either falling
Yeah.
apart or there's just mental health or it's finances have been neglected or it's something or it's
Mm.
physical health is a huge one. Women have 80% of chronic illness diagnoses, autoimmune
Yeah.
diagnoses. And our mental health today is at a crisis level.
Mm.
And then the third one is thrive, which really just means that things just generally feel more balanced.
Mm.
You're able to truly, to me, thriving is truly being able to just relish in each day. And even if it was crazy or even if it was just a roller coaster, but you have the time to really take it in
Mm.
and be in it. It's
I
like a
love that.
beautiful meal, like a
Yeah.
beautiful, gorgeous meal, a 5-course dinner, wow, like I feel really aligned in my life right now.
Yeah.
Even though this is uncertain and this is hard, like I'm aligned, I feel good about my choices. I'm spending more time being, so
Mm.
people are experiencing I'm present with you when I talk to you.
Yeah,
And
I'm genuinely listening, not just going, "Uh-huh, uh-huh, next."
yeah.
Wow. How do you help people get into that thriving space? Because so many of us are in the day-to-day, what I call the barcode effect of meetings, right? So if you look at your calendar, it's just like littered with 30-minute mini meetings, then you've got your jobs. How do you help people out of that space into a space where people are more living and being?
And you can go to claudiachan.com where I actually, instead of writing a second book, and me and Shannon, my colleague, she says, your second book has to be This Is How We Heal.
Nice.
versus
Yes.
this is how we rise. Second one is this is how we heal. The Claudia Chan website is that this is how we heal and what we
Yeah.
need to heal from. And it's sort of the awakening to this what I call the invisible epidemic. And
Mm.
so there's a lot of resources there. I created something called Whole Self Leadership, which you've
Mhm.
done that program,
Yeah.
Whole Life, Whole Self Leadership. And is a framework and a core curriculum. But the first one is just to awaken you and just get you conscious of, okay, what is my current paradigm? And one tool I'll just say right here, and you're a killer businesswoman because you've had 25 or 30, however many years in corporate, and now you're building your own company, and you're a strategist. And the way that we look at business and we look at a project, okay, what's
Mm.
the strategic plan of this project? And even just think, you get a client and you need to assess them, and you need to do a discovery and understand their current paradigm. But then it's okay, where's the new paradigm you want to be at?
Yeah.
So even under my coaching page, like you'll see it's really helping you recognize the awakening to like, what is my current paradigm and what is a more ideal and aligned paradigm of what I'm living. Go through your 360, your whole life org chart or your
Mhm.
whole life
Mhm.
wheel, and we'll go through the departments of your life, and I have you assess them. And
Yeah.
oftentimes it's less about what you want to achieve and it's more about what you want to experience, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
And who you want
So
to be.
that's another thing about our unconscious culture is, and of high performers, which is who I
Yeah.
support and what I study, is we're all about, I want to 10x it, and I want to like increase my revenues by this much, or I want to like have this program, and I want to launch merchandise or whatever it is. But guess what? That's another workflow.
Yeah.
And so we don't realize that we just keep on adding, adding, and we're
Yeah.
actually adding. We want to have all these more achievements so that we can have a wealthier experience. Like, why do you want to make more money? So I help you realize and sort of pull you away from the external stuff and the achievement and more into what do you want to experience. I get you conscious, right? And
Yeah.
then there's a detachment period. This is about your identity. This is about feeling worthy. And there's just so much in the programming and the story we tell ourselves, or unconscious, what's buried. There's so
Mm.
much that is buried in people, so much. And so I really look at a person, and I help people look at themselves as an organization. And there's just stuff that has been stuffed in the closet, and that you don't even know that's there. And you're
Yeah.
operating on this unconscious paradigm and not even knowing that you're sabotaging yourself in
Yeah.
so many ways. And then that's where, when you look at people who've been in the same paradigm for so long, and they try so hard, they muscle so hard every New Year's resolution to make that change,
Yeah.
and it's just the same year over and over again. It's really helping them get whole and in alignment inside through my framework and my
Yeah.
coaching curriculum.
And spending time on yourself, right? Not just on your job, and understanding the different chapters of your life and what you want from them. And as you said, that self-awareness moment of where am I now and where do I want to be, and what narrative I've been telling myself that's either helping or not. And I think a lot of us walk around with a lot of self-narrative that actually holds us back quite significantly. And I remember doing the whole life org chart, as you call it, and all the different chapters, and realizing, oh my God, this part of my life is like a 2 out of 10. I actually need it to be a 6. It doesn't need to be a 10, but it needs to be a
Yeah.
6. And I'm not spending any time. I'm not investing any time on this. And it's never going to get better until I really genuinely commit some time to this. And one of my
And
favorite ones as well that you did is the reframing. And my favorite one, the example, and you gave many, was if you want to live a healthier life and to bring nutrition into your family, into your home, into the way you live and the way you eat, call yourself the chief health and nutrition officer. Like, the reframe of that gives you so much power and permission and license to go, this is actually really important to me and my family and
it's a
my life.
leadership role. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
literally the nutrition of your family.
Yeah.
And that's why, even if in a season you're not, and I call them elevation periods
Mm.
in that program and in the book, and you're bringing me back to like my last body of work, and
Yeah.
obviously, which is all a part of various programs in the new Claudia Chan platform. But even in a season where, okay, let's just say there's a massive deadline, a huge global project you're
Mm.
working on, and maybe you're not eating as well that season and you're not
Yeah.
cooking as much, but at least it's in your periphery vision,
Mm.
and where it just doesn't completely get avoided,
Yeah.
and you're conscious of it. So, hey, yeah, if you're going to spend a little bit more money this month or this season, on, I don't know, getting some healthy meal delivery or whatever it is.
Yeah.
You invest in certain things because you don't want to fall too short. But I also think it's really important to just sort of 10,000 feet step back into where you were. I think that was in the 2019, 20.
2019, yeah.
Yeah, when that program happened right before COVID. You're a millennial, right? Millennial,
Yeah.
yes. Or think about that generation of millennials, or majority of that generation is you work and you hustle
Yeah.
and you get promoted. That is success.
Yeah.
And whereas
Yeah,
my
yeah.
generation, the Gen Xers, was you had a bit more cause and social impact in your
Mm,
generation than we did.
mhm.
Like we didn't grow up with any of that. Like what
Yeah, yeah.
what is purpose in our generation? It was profit. That's what our generation was. You were more of a social conscious, like socially conscious, uh, you know, just your job was to do good in the world, but kill it. Like social entrepreneurship was a huge thing. But the fact that you went into your life and that our generations are coming into career and careerhood and professional life so beelined on career that wait, that's my full-time job to like make it.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah,
these
yeah,
other
yeah.
not and what do I see that's been an outcome of that? I mean, health fell apart or just things fall apart. I don't think that college, as millennials or even as Gen Z, we're not equipping our youth with
Mm.
how to do life. What's more
Yeah.
important, how to do your career or how to do life?
To do life, yeah, for sure. That was the awareness moment, because to be so kind of in the job and not thinking about those other chapters, because I'm a big believer that if things aren't well in your life outside of work, things aren't going to be good in work, no matter how much you're killing it, because you bring that in. If you don't feel happy or confident or healthy or balanced or whatever it needs for you to be enriched and fulfilled and in balance and present and in that state of thriving, it's really hard to turn up at work and bring a full self that is expected when you're not feeling it in other parts of your life. So it's
Yeah.
incredibly important that people spend that time and that reflection to figure out, what do I want? What do I need? And where am I not getting it? And how am I going to do that? Because it very quickly passes you by and you miss the moment.
Yeah, and that I will say is when I look at the last 10 years of my life from 40 to 50 and I reflect on how many times we moved and having kids at 40 and 42, and I've always prioritized because of this consciousness, and my husband's an entrepreneur too, but we've definitely sacrificed professional security and financial
Mm,
security for the core foundation of health and family. And it's the black sheep, and in terms of usually people make sure the career is perfect or the
yeah.
work I'm doing at my job is perfect.
Hmm.
And then everything
Hmm.
else will just get like 5 or 10%, and I'll just figure that out. That is secondary. I'm a futurist. I'm looking at culture and studying people and how do you change culture for the better.
Yeah.
I think the next movement and awakening is how do we change culture so that the work and the career conforms to the health and the person, the health of the family.
Mm, mm. And what do you think the big barriers to that are?
Most people are money, identity. I can't financially, like, even investing time and money into you,
Mm,
like, you're the ripple effect. Your
yeah.
soul is the ripple effect.
Yeah.
When we look at a company and you look at a strategy and you're like, what is the core pillars of this strategy? What's the core mission? And what's the core alignment in a business plan? That is inside of you, and it's got to be a balance of the heart and the head, like, because the innovation and truly what you want and the fulfillment's going to come from that heart and that soul.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's going to come from that love and, wow, what do I want to do every day, and like what is my genius that I can wake up to do this, and it actually, the more I do it, the more it actually refuels my energy and resources energy versus use up all my energy in the
Yeah.
first
And draining it.
email. Yeah, and
Mm,
draining that energy in that
mm.
first thing that I do in the morning. A lot of people are in unhealthy, chronically toxic environments,
Yeah.
whether it's at work or whether it is at home, and we just let it go for so long. And that's the first step is, are people willing to pause and really invest the time and the money in themselves to actually make that the core, that discovery phase
Yeah.
that planning rooted in that, and that's at the core of what my coaching and my community work is when I work with individuals. I call it like almost paradigm shifting. It's inner self coaching, and we go through all my steps. And the thing is, you're gonna wake up and you're gonna worry about, okay, let's just say that requires quitting a job, or let's just say I have clients who have left corporate and who are maybe a year or so, or 6 months or 2 years into having left, and they're really pursuing that truth,
Yeah.
but they're gonna get triggered 100 times a week. They're gonna feel unsafe. They're gonna feel like, "What the hell am I doing?" But it's bringing them back to their foundation of safety. And, okay, so can we detach from the fact that you're not gonna be making this amount and you're not gonna have
Mm.
this coming in, but this is your runway, and can you give after 50 years of XYZ, can we invest this
Yeah.
and see what this opens up? Soul surgery.
Yeah, and healing, right? I love the idea of how do we heal. So is that at the philosophy and the core of your evolution of your business, and is that's what's coming down the track for you in terms of
So
healing?
the paradigm shift is, as we think about the ripple, this
Mm.
body of work, this movement, this wholeness movement is, and my master quote is that life is not about achieving this limitless amount of success, that dopamine of more, 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 more. It is, what does wholeness mean to me? What do I want to experience every day? And like at the end of my life, this is what mattered the most. It's not going to be about the stuff, or it's going to be about the experience and the love and the connection, living and doing your passion and being aligned with purpose. I've had time with my loved ones. It's not the superficial things that we think that we want, that the next social media, scroll is going to tell you you need and you're behind. So it is, what does wholeness mean to you, and how do you then do the work? That's your core career. Is to then
Yeah.
do the inner work to embody and experience this fully. Like, you want to be at the end of your life and say, I fully lived out all of me. I was all of me. I lived out all of me. And I didn't shrink myself. I didn't like
Yeah.
settle. Yeah, it was risky. And yeah, these parts were hard. Wholeness to me is success. It's like, what is success? And I think a lot of people are chasing their trauma's success, not their true success. So that's the work. And that's the next ripple effect. That is that's how I want to ripple effect, is awaken people to this consciousness. And then there's 4 letters. I-HAC, imagination
Hmm.
for the I, healing for the H, A is for alignment, and C is for creation. So there's a whole process that I take people through.
What advice would you give yourself knowing what you know now? Like you've gone through such incredible programs that you've created, but also the experience you've had of other women and their journeys and where they're at. What do you wish you knew at the beginning that you know now?
So there's so many that are coming into my mind right now. I think one of them is enjoy the day. I think that there's always this feeling of, I didn't get enough done. And it's one of my invisible epidemic symptoms, core limiting thoughts, which is often universal and a big one out there, where you never meet the expectations you have for yourself. It's just that it just really chips away at our quality of daily life experience.
Mm,
One practice I'm working really, really hard to do right now is like, the wealth, the vacation is today. It's going to be hard and I'm going to be running around and this is going to happen and that's going to be unexpected. But it's as opposed to an end of day where you're just feeling behind and not enough and things are just so messy, and which chips away at you,
yeah,
at your quality of experience of the day. Like, that is a precious 24 hour, that's a precious 10-hour day or 12-hour day
yeah,
that you don't get back.
yeah, yeah.
And
And we can
so
be
I
our
think
own
in
worst critics sometimes, can't we?
yeah, and this question is helping me polish up what I would say to my younger self is that you're gonna constantly always feel like you're, "When this happens, then." And so just
Mm,
really devour and enjoy each day like a beautiful meal that makes you full, and with all the sort of hard pieces to it, because and see the good in everything of the day. If my husband and I are gonna get at it about the kids being late and it's your fault, no, it's your fault, and it's like everything works and grows you. I think in every meal every day, like, okay, like, this is what I'm really grateful for, and this is what was hard, but this is how I grew from it. And just, I think that is a major one.
yeah,
When I work with my clients too, and I'm in sessions with them, because I get the unload of everything, right, that they're going through. And my thing is, I want to bring them more inner peace and ease. You look at all the triggers happening in our society and you look at the bombs and you look at, I mean, literally the bombs, you look at
Yeah.
the brokenness that we
Mm.
turn on the news and we see what's happening, and there's just a lot of hurt people that are not regulating themselves and don't have the tools to
Mm.
self-regulate
Mm.
and fill up and bring leadership. Like they're broke. Like if you're broken on the inside, then you're going to be broken
Yeah.
on the outside, and you're going to give brokenness into humanity and into your family and into your team that you manage, into society. Leadership is an inside job first. It's the number one.
That might actually be the answer to my final question for you, which is we are calling our guests, like yourself, wave makers, because clearly you've made a huge impact on people's lives. And what advice would you give to aspiring wave makers and future leaders on how they can make a meaningful impact on their life?
I would say that in your life, you're gonna be pulled into culture and what you're supposed to be doing and who you're supposed to be and what you had expected of yourself. But visions are gonna be casted on you. You're gonna get feelings. You're gonna see things that are missing and that are all of a sudden, when it hits you, you just know, wow, there's something I'm meant to create.
Mm.
There's something I'm meant to do. And just as it happened with you, right? You're living
Yeah.
your life and you going through my course and just something hit and it just was a seed that was planted and the seed just started growing, and to
Yeah.
not ignore those visions and those whispers, because humanity needs that for you to create
Yeah.
it. And that really holding in your genius and holding in what you're here to possibly give, humanity is missing out on that. Your kids are
Yeah.
missing out on that. The next generation's missing out on that. And everything is going to tell you this is ridiculous. My life is so much easier if I just keep it the same.
Yeah.
That change is gonna be uncomfortable, and why change when I could just stay the same? And everybody wants more ease, and it is gonna be harder. There is gonna be more anxiety. There is gonna be more questioning of yourself. There is gonna be more obstacles, but that's where the jam is.
Yeah.
That is where you will then continue. It's like a muscle that rips, that keeps on building like a new muscle. Like that's the
Mm.
growth of you. And pursuing that journey is really going to be, society needs it, but like it's important that your work gets out there. But even what's more important is how that pursuit grows you.
Yeah.
It's who you
Yeah.
become in the process.
Yeah.
And so that is like you are the creation, and I think that we become who we're here to be in pursuing our dreams. And so
Yeah.
go for it. And and it's not going to make sense and it's going to be uncomfortable, but that's where all the innovation is. And I would say build like have at least one or two people in your inner circle
Yes.
who are
Yes.
going to champion you, and that you can unload every insecurity, every feeling of shame, because you can't contain all that in the journey, and have them support, make sure that person really loves you and it's not going to be non-biased and is going to cheerlead you through the journey.
Amazing. Well, Claudia, thank you so, so much. This has been incredible for me. As I said at the beginning, this is a full circle moment for me because you were one of my ripple impact moments. And what you bring to the world is beautifully powerful because it gives people the confidence, the structure, the know-how, the ability to really step into themselves and step into their passion and their purpose and what they want to do and what they want to put out in the world. So thank you for being part of my journey. And thank you so much for sharing your leadership, your transformation stories, and the power of the ripples that you've had in the world. So thank you so much for being part of this. It's been such an incredible time to spend with you. So thank you so much.
Thank you. And can I just add one thing?
Please.
If your community wants my toolkit, they can go to claudiachan.com/toolkit, and it takes you through this 5-minute reflection of your life and gets you into the consciousness of your heart, and you'll get some free tools from me.
Yeah, I would highly recommend everybody checking out claudiachan.com. You have inspired me in my journey, and I'm sure you will continue to do so for many, many millions more, I'm sure. So that is a wrap on this Ripple Impact. Thank you so much, Claudia. It's been amazing as always. Everyone tune in next week for more bold voices, inspiring wave makers, guests. I'm Laura Barber. This is the Ripple Impact, and we'll see you next week. Thank you so much. Thanks, Claudia.
Thank
Speak to you soon. Bye-bye.